Hey guys, Uncommon Ramen here for another Board Game Wednesday. I have passed this game, Fallout Shelter, on my local games shop's shelves, I don't know, a dozen times, and always it piqued my interest, but I had a hard time picking it up because I really didn't know what kind of game it was. I mean, it does describe itself as a worker placement game, but I didn't really know what to expect from it, and I ended up going to a buddy's house sometime back. I want to say about maybe 2 months ago, and actually, it was probably only 1 month ago. Now that I think about it, but that's neither here nor there. Um, I ended up getting to play the game with them, and it was actually very interesting. So first, let's take a look at the box here. So this is actually in a tin box. It is very reminiscent. If you see here, it's got the picture of a handle, no actual handle. It should have had a handle. They really should have put the handle here. But it's reminiscent of an old lunchbox from, back. How far back did they do those aluminum lunchboxes? I don't actually know. But anyway, it's reminiscent of those little lunch boxes that you can get. And yeah, so we're gonna take a look at what's inside of here. The top is not I shouldn't say the top. The lid is not hinged on this like a lunchbox would be, so this just comes off completely. And when you jump in, we got our rules here, so we're gonna take this off to the side. So Fallout Shelter is a mobile game that also has an adaptation on the PC, and it's basically a real-time worker placement game. So this adaptation of Fallout Shelter is a worker placement game that is obviously turn-based, and as you can see here, we have beautiful illustrations, and they do a really good job of just making this rulebook very concise and easy to digest. The concept of this game is to be the first person to a specific amount of happiness inside the shelter. Every player is playing inside the exact same shelter. So while you are in charge of your set amount of workers, you still have to manage to find a way to beat everyone in acquiring happiness. And you'll have a multitude of ways to do so. Oh, there you go. So it says right there, the ending of the game is when a player builds the sixth room on their level. So you're in the same shelter, but you each have a different level. Or the threat deck runs out of cards, and then at the end of the game, each player must discard one happiness for each threat on their level. Then the player with the most happiness wins. So it's pretty simple. You just want to get happiness. And again, if you played the mobile version or the PC version, it's kind of the same thing. You just want to keep your vault dwellers happy. So this is going to be the inside. This is going to be the insert for the game, and it's actually pretty good. One downside, unfortunately, though, is that if you leave your components unbagged like I have, if the box sits sideways, it will literally spill everywhere. So it's something to keep in mind. They do provide baggies. I didn't include the baggies in here because I thought for sure that if I put the lid on this that they wouldn't run around, but they do. So just keep that in mind. So we're going to take a look at these components really quick. So we got these little green cubes. These are your cubes that keep track of your resources. Not only do they keep track of every different type of resource you have. There is a maximum amount of resources you can have of any given type. So you have all these cubes to keep track of that. Um, and honestly, they're not any different from any other cubes that you would see in most games. I am happy that they're plastic and not wooden, because they just feel better from a tactile point of view. But they're, like you can see right here, there's tons of them. And then just to kind of go into it, this is your player board, and this indicates the different resources and whatnot. And once you have reached the maximum level here, that is the maximum amount of resources you can accrue for that particular type. So we got power, food, and water. So once you have this whole bar filled up with water, you can't really gain anymore. So it's really important to keep track of that. Just because there's a lot of cubes here doesn't mean that you're going to have that many resources. And then up top, you're going to see the special, which is something that's very iconic for Fallout, which keeps track of different stats, perception. I don't remember what they all are, actually, now that I think about it. A is agility, luck. I want to say is what, intelligence. S is strength, perception. E, I don't remember. It doesn't matter. So anyway, just remember that these are those iconic stats that you'd find in Fallout and a lot of other games, now that I think about it. And you get 4 of those because you can play up to four players with it. You also will receive little pawns, and this is where I think they really went above and beyond for this game, because you could have done meatballs or anything for this, but not only did they give you little plastic pawns that are just absolutely beautifully well done, they are not all in the same pose. They are all in different poses, and they didn't have to do that. And I think this is the thing that kind of blew me away about the game. When I was learning this with my friends, I think I missed about 50% of the rules because I was too busy admiring the different sculpts for these little models that they included. And I mean, it may seem like a trivial thing, but honestly, this kind of stuff really does make a difference as far as the tactile value of this game. And you know, obviously these each represent a different stat on the special meter, but you didn't have to do it. You could have done one single pose. They could have been just, you know, wooden meeples with no real dimensions, but instead they made them all plastic, and they gave you a bunch of different poses to go with. And I think that's just a really cool thing. And as we go through these, each team has a team of the same poses. So there's nothing unique per color. Where there's a brown one, there will be a white one and a blue one and a yellow one. So each one of them has all of these different poses in them. They just differ in color. So we have our white, we have our blue, we have the brown. So here's our blue dudes. And these are actually pretty substantially strong plastic. So I'm not like horribly worried about them getting banged up as they shift around in the packaging and whatnot. And then, obviously, last but not least, we have ourselves our yellow pieces. And again, just the same thing. But just again, the quality here is really great. Between, again, plastic cubes and then, you know, our nice little meeples here. I just think they went really above and beyond with that stuff. And you'll see another component that I believe that they really did the same thing with. The next thing we're going to look at is the happiness tokens. We'll take that guy aside. So we have the 5 times happiness as well as just the 1 time happiness, and that's right here. And these just indicate how much happiness you have. And like I said, at the end of the game, the person with the most happiness is the winner. So you're just trying to get as many of these tokens as you possibly can. I don't actually know like statistically or on average how many tokens people usually get, but this is you just get a bunch of these too. And these ones are just your typical cardboard. Nothing special about these. I wouldn't have expected these to be plastic. There's just too many of them. And then you also have this little guy here. This indicates the person who's going first. And the reason this is really important is because you can actually take a spot on the map that gives you, or not on the map, inside the vault that gives you the first player token. And that's really important to the way this game functions as far as who gets what spot, because because just like every other worker placement or a lot of other worker placement games, the first person to place their piece on a spot locks that spot up for that particular turn. So if there's a spot that you absolutely need, you're going to want to get this first player token. Next up, we're going to look at the I think this is just all room cards. The red ones, I think, are the starter rooms. So we'll just take a quick look. This is the outside of the vault. Then you have the entrance, the vault door. Another section of the vault door, and we'll just kind of show you that those match up like, why can't I get a focus? There we go. They just match up side by side like this. And these are cards that you're going to be placing right at the beginning of the game. They're available immediately. And as you play, you will build more rooms to increase the size of your vault and give you more spots to sit on. And each of these spots will give you resources. Like, for instance, sitting here is going to give you 1 water, and same with this side. And some of the spots, not every spot, are going to have a stat that they prefer. So if you put somebody here that has the perception stat, you actually double the resources that you would gain from this. So instead of getting just 1 water, if you put a guy who you trained in perception that turn, you'll actually receive 2 water. And as you look in here, we have the diner. And again, if you look right here, we have the A and the L. So if you train somebody in luck, you would get 2 food. And if you train somebody in agility, you would get 4 food. So training is really important here. This is the power generator. This is where you're going to get your power. And again, like I said, these are things that are available at the very beginning of the game. This one right here, if you place your character there and lose 2 water, you get to draw a card from the item deck, I think it is. I can't remember exactly what they called it. And then recycle the cards that are face up. So it's just these are just the starting locations. These are going to be available at the very beginning of the game, and they have a red backing to them, so that's what makes them different from the rest of the room deck, which is in blue backing. And as you can see here, they vary pretty heavily on what they do. But you just get a whole bunch of other stuff here. And you can see how much resources each of these cost. So like this is a water, a food, and 3 energy in order to build this room. And you would just build this directly into your level. There you go. So those are the different rooms that you can build. As we dig deeper into the box, we also are given 2 dice. These dice are for fighting monsters, and we'll go into that as we get deeper into the box, because we'll get into the monster cards. So yeah, I don't actually recall these dice being used for anything else but fighting monsters. But yeah, just really cool. They could have been typically just your normal black and white, and they chose red and white. Now thought that was pretty cool. And as we dig deeper in, let me just make sure, pull some of these off of camera. There we go. So we're going to have two different sets here. The first thing here is a bunch of elevators. And one of these elevators you're going to start with right off the bat. And then the other elevators you will only have in there depending on the color of the players that are playing. So if you're playing with blue and yellow, then you're going to add those two elevators as well. Otherwise, you don't have to. You only include the elevators for the colors that are of players that are playing, is what I meant to say. But you will always include this top elevator. That's the one that's in red. And that one is going to connect the last most vault entrance card to the diner and the remaining top level cards. So those are that. And then the next thing you're going to see is the item deck with the gift box on the back. There's a bunch of these cards, and these are just items that you can purchase that will help you throughout the course of this game in one form or another to help give you some sort of advantage. Got some armors here. You get some weapons as well. And you have some just regular old tools. Some pets. And that's your item deck. And I think the last thing that's in here, and let me just fish that guy out. The last thing that is in here, and probably also one of my favorite as far as component quality is concerned, is going to be our what are these called? The baddies, I guess, the enemies that can show up inside. And the reason that I think that's so cool is because A, they're plastic cards, but they're also completely see-through. And I think that is, I mean, that just goes above and beyond. They did not have to be this way. They could have just given you regular cards, and instead they gave us these really neat plastic cards that are see-through, that are just very unique for what they are. And these enemies are going to pop up in any numerous ways throughout the entire vault, and in order to, they pop up on top of spaces, so you have to fight them in order to free up those spaces, so that you can use those spaces again. And they aren't just obviously enemies, they also can be things like a power outage and a fire, but obviously the most present thing here is going to be the different kinds of enemies you would expect to face in Fallout. So that is the different components that are inside of here, and honestly, it is just really well executed. To talk about the game itself as far as gameplay is concerned, it's one of those games where it has a really high learning curve. If you are learning this game with people who already know what they're doing, you are more than likely going to lose. I'm not saying that you will guarantee lose, but you're pretty much going to lose, because the edge is always going to be with the people who have played a couple of games and kind of already understand the basic idea of how the game flows, right? When I was playing with my buds, I kind of didn't expect to win, and one of my friends was just immediately blitzing, getting all of his little workers in place so that he could maximize the potential of his turn by putting down as many workers as he could in order to get as many resources or happiness as he could. Whereas another friend of mine that was playing, because we were playing 3 players, was just specifically trying to build rooms and get the happiness from that and try and blitz the end game as quickly as possible before anybody else has had a chance to get points. The one big kicker is that both of them were trying to get more of these little worker dudes, and that's one mistake that I had made in the early game, was that I wasn't really necessarily trying to get the worker dudes. The other part of that was that there was limited spaces for me to get workers at, and a lot of the time they were already occupied. So that's a big part of this too. That being said, it wasn't as if I couldn't have gone for the first player token and tried to change that. So that's definitely a choice that I made. The other thing about this game that is really unfortunate, though, is that when you are doing a strategy, you are broadcasting it to the entire table what you're doing. And I thought that that was a little bit counterintuitive, because what ended up happening was that it was very obvious that one of my friends was racing to get as many of his little worker dudes as possible, whereas it was very obvious that my other friend was definitely trying to blitz the room building. But the reason this is a big problem is because it was also really obvious that the first thing that I was trying to do was get a weapon early on and kill the bad guys, because you can get happiness from the bad guys. As you can see here, not here, but like this guy is worth a happiness. This guy is worth a happiness. Same here. So you can get resources and happiness from killing these bad guys. So my original idea was to grab a weapon as soon as possible and start killing these inside of our vault. But the downside to that strategy was that I was broadcasting it. As soon as I got the weapon and I started fighting them, it was obvious what I was doing. And because of that, the player that was trying to blitz the room deck, kind of as a side mission, because he had so many workers available, started to also try and get a weapon. And then when he did get the weapon, started to also kill the baddies, which was taking away from my ability to get happiness. And so, again, the learning curve on the game is relatively high, considering it's very difficult to play this game as a new player with people who have played the game before. I would almost suggest that the first time you play this, you play with a bunch of people who also don't know what they're doing, so that you all learn at the same time and make the same mistakes at the same time, and so on and so forth. That being said, it didn't rob me of the joy of the game. I did still enjoy it enough to obviously go out and buy it myself. Not just for the sake of doing the review, but or even for the sake of the components just being such well done components, but because the game itself was actually entertaining. And then once I actually realized what I was doing, despite that particular game being long gone for me, it gave me insights on how to play the next time I decide to play again. So the game is definitely really interesting. It is only a worker placement game, however, and so you really have to enjoy the pasted on theme of Fallout to really get any benefits from it. But I think between the component quality and the packaging and the theme itself, it is a fun one to pick up. And I think in total, I want to say it was only $40, which for as small of a package as it does look like, that does seem high, but this is Fantasy Flight after all. That is pretty much it. So, if you liked the video, please go ahead and like and subscribe. And if you have any comments, leave them down below. I will be removing negative comments because, hey, we don't need that. Keep it classy, folks. There is no need to be negative. If you feel the need to support me, I do have a Patreon under Uncommon Ramen as well. I do all of this in my free time, so the more support I can get, the more often I can bring content like this to you. And yeah, that's it, guys. Until next time. Peace.